What's up, everyone? It's Ben from the Vinyl Jukebox, and as you probably have heard, yesterday the absolute legend Ozzy Osbourne passed away at the age of 76. This was not unexpected. I mean, Ozzy had been battling Parkinson's for years now and had a ton of different ailments. But it was a little surprising given the fact that Ozzy performed a little over 2 weeks ago at the Back to the Beginning concert that he put on as a tribute to Black Sabbath and his own solo career. And to be honest, he looked great at that show. I mean, given the circumstances, Ozzy performed from a chair, but I thought he sounded great. I thought he had a lot of energy. I thought maybe he might have a little more left in the tank, maybe a new album. I know that Sharon had been talking about that. I'd heard that in a couple of interviews. But unfortunately, that's not going to come. And so Ozzy sadly passed away. Yesterday I saw a lot of tribute videos pouring out, and I figured I'd take a little time to digest the news. I mean, I was at work when I heard, and it was devastating at the time, but really it sunk in when I got home and started seeing the posts and really got to think about it a little bit. I mean, Ozzy, not only was he extremely influential to pretty much all of my favorite hard rock artists, but he was one of my favorite hard rock or metal artists. I mean, Ozzy, it's crazy because I was thinking of for this video, and this video is really just going to be kind of a stream of consciousness video. I mean, I'm not going to do any cuts, and I do want to do a little bit of a album ranking to close out the video because I thought that might be fun and a nice tribute. But when I was coming up with ideas for this video, I was thinking about when was the first time that I heard Ozzy or Black Sabbath, and it was really tough to think about that because Ozzy and Black Sabbath have kind of always been there, whether it's in commercials, sporting events, video games. I mean, the music has always been there, so I really can't say I could pinpoint a time where I, first heard Ozzy or Black Sabbath. But I do know the first song that I ever recognized from Ozzy or Black Sabbath, and that was probably Iron Man. I remember that as a song where my friends would sing it or play it, and I always thought that it was such a cool riff. I always thought that it was such a cool, such cool lyrics. And me as a little kid getting into heavy music, that was like the heaviest thing I had ever heard at the time. And, we're talking about like late 90s, early 2000s, but that was awesome to me. I always remember Ozzy from commercials on TV, from even one of the Austin Powers movies where he has a little bit with the rest of the Osbournes in it. I remember clips from the Osbourne show when I was a kid. So Ozzy not only was a big part of my life in terms of music, but also in terms of pop culture. I mean, always around. He was that wild guy. He was that guy who bit the head off a bat. He was that heavy metal legend that I always looked up to. I always enjoyed hearing his voice. I think one of the most recognizable in all of music. I mean, you know it right away when you hear Ozzy's voice that it's him. So that being said, extremely, extremely terrible loss. And like I said, we all knew that this was coming, but, it definitely hits hard, and it's definitely one of those things. And I think people knew that it was going to hit me kind of hard because I got a lot of texts when he passed, and, people know I'm a big music fan, so they did that. But I also wanted to talk about a time where I saw Ozzy. So I was fortunate enough to get to see Ozzy Osbourne on his last ever tour, what would turn out to be his last ever tour, the No More Tours 2 tour, in 2018. Now, I had missed the final Black Sabbath tours or the reunion tours and then the final ones because, as a kid, didn't have much money, it just wasn't really realistic for me. But when he announced that No More Tours 2 tour, I was determined to go. I went with my wife Samantha, her mom, and my college roommate Julian. We drove over to Jones Beach to see the show, and it was pouring that day. And the lineup for that show was Ozzy and Stone Sour. Stone Sour opened. They put on a phenomenal show. They had really cool, kind of like that smoke coming out, but I guess you'd say smoke bombs, I don't know. Giant inflatables. So it was a really cool set from them. I really wanted to see them. I had seen Slipknot before, but seeing Stone Sour was a completely different thing. And then it was time for Ozzy's set, and by this time it was pouring. We're all wearing ponchos. We're kind of up a little bit. I think I my ticket somewhere. I didn't even think to take it out. We were on the, kind of one of the upper levels. We're wearing ponchos, and the rain's coming down. Ozzy comes out. There's this giant cross in the back of the stage with, a screen built into the cross. So that was kind of cool. And I just remember Ozzy, starting the set with I Don't Know, just having so much energy. I mean, he was pretty up there in age at the time, but he still was moving. He wasn't sitting at the time. The set list was awesome. His voice sounded phenomenal. Zakk Wylde on guitar. Zakk Wylde came back into Ozzy's kind of realm after missing the last solo album of his, Scream, after he wasn't in the band for that. So it was really just an amazing experience. And one funny thing that I remember from that is, if anyone knows the Jones Beach Theater, when it rains, and when it rains hard, the standing room only, GA section in the front will tend to flood because the stage is right on the water. So it will tend to flood, and people standing in that GA area will be standing in a big pool of water. Now, so it was raining for a while, so there was about like a foot of water. And Ozzy at the time, I know he was known for having buckets of water. For this tour, he had a hose, like a big fire hose type thing. So people are watching the set, the crowd is kind of back a little bit in the front, because it was really deep. But like, I'd say people were still in like a foot of water. And out comes Ozzy with this hose, and he just starts spraying the hell out of the people in the front. And we're all looking down like, oh my God, those people paid so much money for their tickets. And now they started out soaked, and they're just getting obliterated by Ozzy in this water cannon. And that was Ozzy. Ozzy was just so funny, and he would just do ridiculous stuff, and you never knew what you were going to get out of him. Just so unpredictable. And that's what drew me to him as a kid. I mean, I just thought he was the coolest. So that's my Ozzy experience. And right here, I'll show you guys a little photo of the show. And, it's the only photo that I could find that I took from the show. But I actually took it as we were leaving. We left kind of during the last song. We stayed for the last song, but we started leaving. We started heading down, and we found a place in the lower levels to where we heard the last song, Paranoid. So I got a quick photo. And that I'm going to cherish forever, because as far as I could find yesterday, that is the only photo that I have from that show. So really means a lot to me. So now let's get on with the Ozzy album ranking. This is a tribute to Ozzy, and I'm just going to rank the solo albums. I'm just ranking solo studio albums. And to be honest, I really like all of Ozzy's albums. There's not one that I dislike that I wouldn't put on, but some I like more than others. So starting out with the last one, actually, let me see here. So Ozzy has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 studio albums. Okay, so see, I'm kind of doing this on the fly. Like I said, I'm just kind of putting this video together. So coming in at number 11, we have Ozzy Down to Earth. This album came out and see, I didn't really do research before this. I'm just putting this together as we go. And I ranked these albums very quickly. but I kind of knew what I wanted to do anyway. This one came out in 2001. The album starts out really strong with Gets Me Through, Facing Hell. I really like those songs. With this album, it just, it's not that it's a bad album. It just feels a little like it's kind of missing something. It seems like kind of the same kind of stuff that we've been getting from Ozzy. But I really do like those songs. I like the song Junkie as well. That's really cool. So, Down to Earth, my number 11. My number 10 would be Ozzy Osbourne, Black Rain. This album I wasn't really too familiar with until fairly recently when they did the reissue. I mean, it starts out so heavy with, the two openers, Not Going Away and I Don't Want to Stop. But the album kind of gets a little redundant. I'm sorry, my phone is running out of battery. The album does get a little bit redundant at that point, but this is probably Ozzy's, if not his heaviest, one of his heaviest albums for sure. Just killer guitar playing from Zach on it. This would be Zach's last full studio album with Ozzy. So Ozzy Osbourne's The Black Rain, number 10. Number 9, I'm going to go with Ozzy Osbourne's Scream. I know I just featured this on my recent finds video. This album was one of the first that I was introduced to as a whole album from Ozzy. When I was a kid, I used to go to the local library and I used to check out CDs and I used to burn them to my computer. And this was the only album that they had of Ozzy's on CD. So I got really familiar with this album. Obviously, this doesn't have Zach on it. It has Gus G. But it's got some great songs on it. I mean, the title track, Scream, is great. Let It Die, or it's Let Me Hear You Scream. Soul Sucker is fantastic. I used to listen to this album when I worked out or when I was at track meets when I was a kid. So I really like this one. This one came out in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, 2010. So number 9, Ozzy Osbourne, Scream. Number 8, and this was one of Ozzy's last, Ordinary Man. I thought that this album was really good. I mean, Straight to Hell had Slash on it, which was a really cool feature. This is when he really started with the features. Ordinary Man with Elton John, kind of like a ballady kind of song. Under the Graveyard was really cool too. It's a Raid, when he was doing a lot of work with Post Malone. So this album was really cool. It was cool to see, after all of Ozzy's health problems, that he was still able to put together a really cool album. This is his first team up with Andrew Watt. So number 8 is Ordinary Man. Number 7, I'm going to go with The Ultimate Sin. This album was kind of like a little more polished than some of his other albums. I mean, this was his last with Jake E. Lee. Very 80s sounding production, but it's got some killer tracks on it as well. The interesting part about this album is the title track, or the big single off of this album, Shot in the Dark. Sorry, I'm trying to get this out of here. Shot in the Dark is actually the last song on this album. But it's got, Secret Loser, The Ultimate Sin is a great song. Shot in the Dark, like I said, Killer of Giants, Lightning Strikes. Just a fantastic album. And I think this is one of his coolest pieces of album artwork. This one's produced by Ron Nevison. A lot of people say it's kind of like too polished or over polished. I don't know about that, but I think it sounds very of its time for sure. Number 6 is Patient Number 9. This was, what would prove to be Ozzy's last studio album. I thought that this one was his second with Andrew Watt producing. I thought that this one was a little better than the first one, definitely much heavier. This one saw Ozzy working with Mike McCready from Pearl Jam, Jeff Beck. This was one of Jeff Beck's last projects here. Zakk Wylde, Tony Iommi came back to work on a couple of songs on this one. Eric Clapton. So this one definitely had some heavier tracks on it. I thought that it was a lot better than Ordinary Man. A great way to end. I thought Ozzy's voice on this one sounded phenomenal. So definitely number 6, Patient Number 9. Number 5, I'm going to go with No Rest for the Wicked. This was the first album that Ozzy did with Zakk Wylde. You know, the first song on this one, Miracle Man, is still one of my favorite Ozzy tracks. Just a really cool way to introduce Zakk Wylde. We also have Devil's Daughter, Crazy Babies. I mean, a great way to end the 80s. I kind of liken this to the sound of kind of like Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood. It had that big 80s sound, better production, I think, than The Ultimate Sin for sure. So number 5, I'm going to go with Ozzy Osbourne's No Rest for the Wicked. Number 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Oh my gosh, I think I totally miscounted, but we'll just go with the next one here. Ozzy Osbourne's Bark at the Moon. You know, what else can I say? This was the introduction of Jakey Lee as a guitarist. After this was the first album after Randy Rhoads' passing, and what better way to introduce Jakey Lee? That solo in Bark at the Moon, just legendary. Also have Rock and Roll Rebel. I mean, just a great album from Ozzy. Very classic era right there. All right, next one. And since I lost count, I'm not even going to bother trying to figure out the numbers anymore because I don't want to waste your time. Definitely. And this video is a tribute to Ozzy, so definitely wanted to mean something for sure. Ozzy Osbourne's Osmosis. This one I think is kind of like a cult classic in a way in terms of Ozzy fans. I mean, probably didn't do as well at the time as some of his others, especially coming off of No More Tears. But I think this one has killer tracks. This saw Ozzy reuniting with Black Sabbath bass player Geezer Butler on this. I think that this has one of the most killer lineups on this album. I mean, Ozzy, Geezer, Zakk Wylde, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it has Randy Castillo on drums. Let me just double check. No, Dean Castronovo on drums. Okay, so, and you can see this still has the order form for the merch, so really cool there. So kind of like an all-star killer lineup on this album, and it's got some really heavy tracks on it. I mean, Perry Mason was the lead single from this album, just fantastic, very heavy. Thunder Underground is one of the heaviest songs Ozzy ever put out. You know, and at a time where grunge was kind of taking over, Ozzy had to get really heavy, and I think this album really did that for him. So Ozzy Osbourne Osmosis next. The next one here I'm going to go with is Ozzy Osbourne's No More Tears. I think this was his big, it was probably his biggest album. It had the big single No More Tears, Mr. Tinker Train, I Don't Want to Change the World. The guitar solo for No More Tears is probably one of my favorite guitar solos of all time. I think it's just epic and amazing. This one really has a giant sound. This is, I think it's kind of like the perfect Ozzy album. It has those great ballads. It has those really heavy songs, those poppy, catchy lyrics. Just great stuff. And, you know, like I said, competing with grunge in the 90s, Ozzy had to do something big and great, and this would definitely be it. All right, going into the last two, okay? My 1 and 2 probably are pretty obvious at this point. 2 would be Ozzy Osbourne's Diary of a Madman. I mean, this one I was introduced to a little later, but, you know, it's still just as great as the first one. I mean, you have Randy Rhoads just killing it on guitar. I know that these were recorded very close together. Over the Mountain, Flying High Again was one of Ozzy's, you know, biggest classics. You Can't Kill Rock and Roll, Believer. I mean, every song on this album is a classic pretty much. So Diary of a Madman, number 2. And last but not least, the one that kind of got me started with all this, I mean, this was my first Ozzy album that I picked up on CD. And that was probably after hearing so much about it from watching That Metal Show as a kid and watching Eddie Trunk talking about Ozzy and talking about all the greatness and everything just amazing about Ozzy and that kind of music. And that would be Blizzard of Oz. You know, just I remember as a kid having this in my iPod and just repeating it over and over. Just, you know, Crazy Train is obviously the overplayed one, but just songs like I Don't Know, songs like Goodbye to Romance, Suicide Solution, Mr. Crowley, Steal the Night Away. You know, there's just so many amazing songs on this album. Perfect Ozzy album, not a bad song. My introduction as a whole to Ozzy, and it did not disappoint. And you know, I know that this was originally intended to be a band called Blizzard of Oz, but you know, instead we got Ozzy and we got the tremendous solo career, and could not ask for anything better. So that's my Ozzy ranking, everybody. And like I said, just wanted to do a little tribute to Ozzy, and you know, he's gonna live on through his music. I think with all these guys, you know, what was really sad, I was driving to work this morning, I was thinking about, wow, you know, there's gonna be a time very soon where we're not going to have any of these guys anymore, any of these big rock legends. You know, I grew up and these guys were it. I mean, I've never lived through a time where Ozzy did not exist. So it's a big deal to me, and you know, it's very sad, but like I said, I'm fortunate enough to have seen him, and that's why I try to see these guys when I can, because you know, there's going to be a time where they're not there anymore. But they will live on through their music. And Ozzy, I'm going to keep on blasting your music. I've been doing it for years, so why stop now? And your music still makes me feel so, so good when I hear it. So Ozzy, rest in peace. You know, we won't forget you. You'll live on through your music, and we love you. And as you would always say to end your shows and throughout your shows, God bless you. God bless you all. All right, everybody. So that's my Ozzy tribute video, and let me know in the comments below, what are your greatest Ozzy memories? Did you ever see him in concert? What are your favorite Ozzy albums? What do you think about my ranking? Would you have ranked them differently? Let me know in the comments below. And please don't forget to leave a like and a comment below this video. Subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching, and rest in peace, Ozzy. Thanks so much, everybody.